Oh, I forgot to do this. Hey, everybody. Coast to Coast Combat. Well,
Two times. Two times.
I'll have to edit that out later. Maybe not. Fuck it. Coast to Coast Combat Hour. Ed Carvajal, Matthew Hawkins with you on the Bellator 293 Fight Week. Brought to you by AllAccessMMA.com. Make sure you check out AllAccessMMA.com for your mixed martial arts news, especially if you were really into UFC San Antonio last week. We were trying to get Jacob on here to talk, kind of look back at it, but he's actually still working on content over at allaccessmma.com from UFC San Antonio. They took over Texas last week, and that's where All Access MMA is based out of. And I know he's got a lot of video content. So go to their website, check out the videos that he's uploading. Probably as we speak, he's still working on them for any behind the scenes stuff that you might have missed. It was a pretty entertaining card too. Briefly before we get into Bellator 293, I know we had Dave on last week, so we didn't really mention too much of it, but we did look at the main event. Dave Manley of the MMA Bobblehead CEO, he had picked Chito to win, and it looked like it was going to happen, Matt, like towards the end. But I
Yeah.
guess that's what happens when you're a late starter, I guess.
Yeah, it just doesn't really work very well when you're fighting top level competition. The guys don't gas out. They don't, and I don't even think he won really those later rounds. I think it was just kind of, if at best, it was a kind of a draw through those maybe the last 10, 12 minutes. And even that might be being a little bit biased. I didn't even, to be honest, it kind of zoned out a little bit during it. It wasn't the barn burner we expected. You know, not Sandhagen's fault. Barrett came out slow, and it just never really, the fight just never really picked up a rhythm where we got that back and forth that we were kind of anticipating, and Sandhagen controlled on the ground and was able to get some takedowns, and that's your world. But when you're looking for a brawl between two guys who are known for some bloody battles, it didn't really make that happen. But big win for Corey Sandhagen. I know he's now calling out another guy from your area, Dashvili. So looks like that could be a potential fight down the line. Although Sandhagen, I guess, got a pretty decent medical suspension. I haven't seen the exact length of it, but I know it was longer than Barris. So be interesting to kind of see how all that unfolds. You just never know anymore what any of these divisions are going to do, who's going to get title shots. There's no rhyme or reason to anything really anymore.
yeah, but anyway, that was if you're into those UFC fight nights, it was just nice to have it on regular ESPN. Again, check out Jacob's site, allaccessmma.com, if you want any more highlights from that. But right now, as we enter the warmer seasons and the seasons change from out like a lion in like a lamb, or whatever the fuck the saying is, things are ramping up and more along the lines of what you and I like, as far as other promotions outside of the UFC, and right in your backyard, Bellator 293. That's a long time coming for them at Pachanga Resort. I feel like they haven't been there in a while.
Yeah, not since well, shoot, what are we at? We're, I guess, I want to almost say like the 220 issues. It's pre-COVID, so we're a few years back now. Yeah, that was it was look at that was the Lima Lay era, and the Korshkov Larkin fight. Actually, I think that was the last one there. So yeah, it's definitely been a little while, and it's nice to have it back. I see fans kind of bitching. We bitch, everybody bitches a little bit. It's not the this isn't the most stacked, top heavy Bellator card of all time, but people kind of forget that this is kind of what they did in the past. It wasn't always loaded cards. They would bounce around to some smaller casinos and have some cards to help develop fighters, and allow for some local guys to get some experience, and work their way towards the quote unquote tentpole events, which
Yeah.
we don't really hear that term very often anymore. But that was kind of always the way I understood Coker's, you know, uh,
Hmm.
you know, plan was to have, a bunch of these kind of smaller shows, and then you'd get, half a dozen. Every other month you get a big tent pole or something like that. So
Yeah.
seems like it might be getting back to that. I'm just happy there's fights this close to me.
Yeah, I mean that even with like people talking about with the UFC, like they're starting to venture out more to other places. They're starting to announce other places for fight nights, not just all Apex events. So it's kind of like that's what we're seeing with Bellator, where they're doing stuff like this, and also damned if they're doing it, damned if they don't. If they're not putting on cards with guys that have been fighting for a while and more well known names, are getting made fun of for featuring older fighters, and now they have fighters. This is a good card of like the Bellator built like up and coming like guys that have been fighting with Bellator for a while, and again to me I'm a big fan of it. So before we look at the main card, we might as well just like skim through the prelims, because before we started recording, which is why I fucked up the beginning, is because we were just skimming through the prelims, and there's actually some notable fighters on the prelims. One like this one that you mentioned with Lance Gibson Jr. I mean, um, there's so
Yeah,
many.
Dad Lance Gibson Sr. fought in one of the early UFCs, in the 20s.
Hmm.
Fought a guy named Jermaine Andre, if I remember correctly. I want to say maybe UFC 27 ish, but yeah, Gibson Jr. basically had all of his fights in Bellator, 7-0 now.
Hmm.
He's fighting Tokov, Vladimir Tokov, who has had ups and downs while in Bellator, but the younger brother of Vladimir, and always a competitive fight. Team Fedor, what they're going to bring to
Hmm.
the table, and looks it's a good fight. The winner of that fight, especially if it's Gibson Jr., I imagine probably will start to become more of a household name and and,
Hmm.
and get recognized. Um,
Yeah.
so definitely a good prelim fight for there.
Yeah, and this fight, I mean, Lucas Brennan. I know Bellator themselves. I mean, they're Lucas Brennan. They always kind of add him last minute to media days and stuff because I think they're trying to push him. And it's because if you look at his record, he's undefeated, young, up and coming fighter that you should keep an eye on. And there was a couple of other names on here. Oh, here we go, Joey Davis. Um, and
Undefeated All American wrestler against Jeff Creighton. We mentioned with John Brumley a couple weeks back, and Creighton fights out of Team Quest. He's been on a nice little win streak now, so he gets a chance to in a sense, shock the world. Although, like I said, it's prelim, but he comes to this fight a pretty good underdog. But when you fight out of Team Quest, you're always into it. As I mentioned, John Brumley, real quick, I want to
oh
congratulate
yeah,
him on securing he's getting his amateur title fight, welterweight title fight at Epic Fight San Diego, May 12th. So coming off of his big win at Hendo Fight Night 11, he, since the first time we had him on, he said his goal was to get to that amateur title fight and eventually go pro after that. So, um,
May 12th. That's kind of soon when you think about it.
yeah, good news to him. I mean, his last fight, he finished in basically 10, 11 seconds, so suffered no
Hmm.
damage. So able to get right back in the training room and start working towards not a world title, but an amateur, state title. So good for him. And like I said, best of luck. And we'll be talking to him, I'm sure, before
Oh
that fight
yeah.
again. Yeah. So also, a couple names just, we mentioned Maria Henderson, Benson Henderson's wife. She also fights on the prelims. Again, some of these could be post limbs. So
Hmm.
there's 17 fights scheduled for the card, 12 on the main. So I'm sorry, 5 on the main. So there's 12 prelims. They're starting the prelims 3 hours prior to the main card. So
Yeah.
if you get quick finishes, they might be able to work in. But
Hmm.
usually, there's probably likely to be 4 um, post limb fights. So
Yeah,
uh,
this fight too is like one that I was actually surprised it wasn't opening the main card. Adam Piccolotti versus Mandel Nalo, two fighters that Bellator lightweights too that they've been pretty. They've usually when they come out this way, especially when they're doing Mohegan Sun. I know Nalo's fought out here a lot and Piccolotti as well. Um, so that's one if you're gonna watch the prelims, that's definitely one to keep an eye on. So it's not a bad card in your neck of the woods. I know you'll be there for it in person, which should be fun for you. But let's jump into the main card. Um, Here we go.
Sullivan Collie versus Luke Trainer. First thing I noticed about this light heavyweight bout is you got two tall dudes. Trainer comes in at 6'6". McCauley 6'3". So um, this is two bigger, kind of in the mold of Chris Weidman a little bit. As far as a 6'3", 6'6" is a special height no matter what weight class you're in. Um, Collie, I don't know a ton about these guys, but Collie's undefeated, 5-0. Trainer 6-1. Collie seems to come trains out of Arizona. All five of his wins are by TKO or KO finish. Um, Looks like he probably uses a wrestling base, so I'm gonna go with Collie to win this fight. Again, though, don't throw a bunch of money on DraftKings based off that. Do a
Yeah,
little bit
the
more research. This one kind of jumped up on us
mhm.
as it was added fairly late to the main card.
And the fan prediction on Bellator.com shows that it's almost 50-50 with the picks too. So keep that in mind if you are a betting person. That's one you kind of want to take that to heart. It's 50-50. Jaleel Willis versus Rustam Khabilov. Um, Man, I always kind of I know Willis seems to have the height and reach advantage here at welterweight. Um, but it looks like the fans. I mean, when you see these Russian fighters coming into MMA, it's kind of hard to. You always kind of lean as soon as you see a name like that. I mean, it's not. I know it's not Magomed level, but um, looks like the fans are in agreement with where I'm going. 72% of the fans think Kabalov is going to win, and I can't help but agree with them.
Well, Khabilov's been around forever. He fought
Yeah,
in the UFC going back to
that
2000.
too. Yeah.
Shoot, what was his? He fought in the Ultimate Fighter 16 finale in 2012. So he was in the UFC 11 years ago. Has wins over Yancy Medeiros. Has a win over George Masvidal. Um, Norman Park, who was a big name at one time. Chris Wade, who's made his name in PFL.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but this is also his first fight in almost 4 years.
Mm.
Um, he signed with Bellator, what seems like, he signed with them a couple years ago. Had a fight with Korshkov, canceled, kind of in the COVID run there in 2021. Um, but he's war tested. He's 24-4. I definitely lean Khabilov as well. Willis picked up his first win in Bellator. His last fight after a couple losses came in with a lot of fanfare. But I go with Khabilov. I think he's a veteran who, unless he just comes out rusty as hell.
Mm-hmm.
I think with the tools. I mean, I just mentioned he beat Jorge Masvidal, which that alone on a resume would be enough to generally make you the favorite in most Bellator fights.
Mm-hmm.
It just would. So
Yeah.
um, yeah, I go with Khabilov to win this fight, and I'm actually excited to see this fight. I think it has potential to really be maybe not like the most competitive fight, but I think there could be some solid back and forth.
And then we move on to our next fight, with which is kind of like the fight that I'm keeping an eye on just because I've followed Aaron Jeffries' career for quite a bit, and John Salters as well. I mean, who I don't know. I saw a couple of interviews already with I didn't get to speak with Jeffrey. I mean, at least not officially for this fight, but I'm watching a lot of interviews in his media day to day. Both fighters. I know Salter doesn't seem worried about Jeffrey, and I think people still think Aaron Jeffrey's a wrestling based fighter, even though he's been knocking people out since he got to Bellator. I remember in CFFC that was kind of like one of the things that even the commentators were saying, "Oh, he's a strong wrestler," but Jeffrey's been telling people, "I'm not. I'm really good with my hands." But it looks like I mean, based on the fan picks, 67% feel like Aaron Jeffrey's going to win. So if I don't know how aware Salter is of it, or if he's just doing some gamesmanship. I mean, it's a tough fight. But we thought um, what's his name? I thought the fight with I can't believe I'm forgetting his name.
Vanderfort.
Austin Vanderford. Yeah, I thought the fight with Vanderford was going to be tough, and that wound up being pretty quick. So this one's definitely going to be one to pay attention to. But I'm going with Jeffrey here. I feel like he's riding a high. He's really on a career high right now, and I feel like it's going to continue, especially with the funny rankings in Bellator where they suddenly dropped him without him losing to anybody um, recently. But yeah, I'm going with Jeffrey here.
Yeah, I think the fan percentage is a little bit of Jeffrey being kind of that, shiny new toy coming into Bellator and having a couple big wins, because I don't necessarily take him as a 67% favorite. I think his
Hmm.
fight's a lot closer than that. Salter's last two losses are to Iblem and Musasi. So he is
Hmm.
fighting the creme de la creme of the middleweight division. With all that said, I am going to pick Jeffrey because I do think that he is on the rise as opposed to Salter, maybe perhaps kind of leveling out a little bit. And I think they do kind of neutralize each other a tad with the wrestling. And when that happens, I got to go with the guy who's shown some lightning in his hands and
Hmm.
um, as being the difference maker. And assuming they kind of neutralize each other and this fight remains on the feet, I got to go with Jeffrey. He's shown the ability to put people out and really do damage. So, and he's not afraid to get into a war either. So,
Hmm.
that's where I lean towards him. But I do think this is. I think this is the you know. Will it be fight of the night? I don't know. When you get two guys that are quote unquote wrestlers, you never know how it's quite going to unfold. It could turn into a grind fest where it's just going to be who's tougher and who wants it more. But I think that as far as like what the main event we'll get to because that has some title implications. But I
Hmm.
think Jeffrey with a win here, I think with an impressive win here, I think he really could potentially jump into the title fight in his next fight. Maybe one more fight after this, but I mean I think if it's
Yeah, maybe
impressive,
by year's end. Yeah.
if an impressive win here, I think it gets him in line. And I think it almost guarantees him a title fight, even if he has to wait out a few months for the uh, Musasi's next fight to kind of figure out. I think he's fighting Fabian Edwards, so
Hmm.
let that kind of settle and see how that goes. But I think you're basically down to these two guys and those two guys to determine who's gonna get the next title fight. And like I said, Jeffrey's got a lot of highlights already with Bellator in his
Hmm.
short run there. So if he's able to pick up another one, I think it could bode well for his potential, and he hasn't fought for the title, whereas everybody else is kind of shuffled around a little bit. So he could be
Yeah.
a new face. And he's got the mullet. I mean, he's got all the stuff that you know
Yeah.
it's the stuff that can kind of add a little bit of flair to the fight. So um, I'm excited for this one though. That was the one that jumped out at me when the card was made. Co-main event, women's featherweight. I mean, I guess when you look at it, you really potentially have three number one contender fights here. Kat
Hmm.
Zingano, Leah McCourt. Cyborg hasn't been real happy with Zingano. Been calling her a duck, acting like she's ducking fights. I when you get to this level, I hate to ever criticize anybody and call them a duck because they're getting in a cage and they're fighting. Maybe she doesn't want to fight Cyborg. Maybe she does. Maybe she just wants to get as many paychecks she can before she goes in there and fights a Cyborg who could potentially end your career. I mean, that's really, I think, the realistic. You're going to take a beating against Cyborg if you're going to, even if you beat her, you're going to take something. Um, I'm not real sure how I see this fight going. I mean, the my brain tells me Kat Zingano because I've seen her win. I've seen her do her thing. I feel like she's probably the more skilled and more violent fighter of these two.
Hmm.
Um, I'd say definitely the more violent fighter, but you know, Leah McCourt 7-2, losses to tough opponents, and maybe getting away from Europe might do her some well too because it seemed like they kind of had her uh, doing a lot of fights over there. So maybe getting to the states, getting away from kind of her comfort zone might help her. But I'm gonna go with Zingano to win by decision, um, and probably a grueling. I think this is one where it's going to end, and you're not going to really know who won the fight. I think it's gonna be a close. Um, if anybody finishes somebody, I think Zingano will finish from a top, maybe a mount position,
Hmm.
um, later in the fight. But I think it's a pretty evenly matched fight, especially at this time in their careers.
Yeah, I agree with you. I feel like Zingano has the edge here. I mean, not to take anything away from McCord because she's obviously not ranked where she is for no reason, but she has been able to pull some stuff out when she gets put in bad positions, and Zingano has definitely you know been the recipient of some bad timing or bad positions in fights herself. So, I mean, that being said, she's still, when you look at who's, she's more of the grinder. 72% of the fans on the website, Bellator.com, going with Zingano. I'm going to go with that too. I think Zingano pulls it off. Then we have the heavyweight main event Marcelo Golm versus Daniel James. Um,
Two big dudes.
yeah.
Um, Kind of a stylistic matchup a little bit here. I feel like you got the big striker in James against your Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu heavyweight in Golm. Um, you know, it's we. Golm is ranked number one right now. He's the number one contender. James, uh, 8-ish, 7, 8. I don't know if there's many shifts since the initial poster
Let's
came out. I
check.
guess let's double check the rankings real quick to see how it's been moved around. Not that it really makes a huge difference because obviously the number one's still going to be. Oh yeah, okay, it's moved a lot now.
Yeah, Golm is 5 and James is
James is
7.
7, so James has moved up since the poster was made, and Gomes dropped down 4 spots. Um, oh no, I'm sorry, I'm reading it wrong. It's not a 1; it was a 7. So Gomes moves up, James moves up. Um, when you look at the heavyweight rankings right now, we're looking at so you got Ryan Bader champion, you got Linton Vassell, who it's got to get the next fight. His performance against Moldavsky was, I mean, it was UFC style beatdown.
Hmm.
Um, Maori, who's coming off of a draw. Fortune, who's kind of in limbo. He's had a lot, mostly downs in his last few fights.
Yeah.
Um, so this fight really probably jumps somebody up to maybe right behind Linton Vassell, and probably realistically probably creates a number one title fight or another competitor fight, maybe against Maori. Um, so I lean when it comes to heavyweight jiu-jitsu guys, I tend to go with the strikers against them, because we don't see a lot of Fabricio Verdunes,
Hmm.
and I feel like the bigger jiu-jitsu guys tend to be a little slow and they tend to take a big punch every once in a while.
Hmm.
So I think I'm going to go with James in this fight to win. Um, God, I just hope it's not a slow boring, lumbering fight. But
Yeah.
maybe that's why I'm kind of going with James because I feel like he can light the crowd up if he can connect with something big. He's got a lot of knockouts on his record. Um, I think Golm is probably the better prospect, but I'm gonna go with the striker over the jiu-jitsu guy in the heavyweight division here and go with James by TKO second round.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm gonna agree with you on that one. Is that what I wrote down? Yeah. Yeah, I do agree with you on that one. Um so that's for Friday night Bellator 293. I know you're gonna be in house for it, so should be a good time for you. Not as good a time for me, but I'll be watching it from here in New Jersey. Just some quick news on Bellator for folks that aren't. They announced a bunch of events. Um, they're going to Hawaii, but they did they're going to Chicago in June. Nemkov and Romero are the main event for that. So they announced that this week. The other thing that for folks that like the undercard fights that they put together, this card right here, Bellator 296, Musasi versus Edwards. The fight that we were supposed to get the last time they were out in Europe. Let's see if they put it in here because me and Nolan King were talking about Luca Poclete when we did our year-end show. I want to see if they added it to the website yet. I don't
Doesn't
see
look
it
like
on
it.
there. Or maybe it's on the main card. But Luca Poclete and Oliver Enkamp were supposed to fight, and they rebooked that for this card. And that fight is going to be something. If you go to, I should have brought up the articles. if you go to mymmanews.com, I wrote submit. Sometimes I do submission breakdowns over there, and they both had unique submissions victories in their fights before they were supposed to fight each other. So, usually when a matchup like that happens, I expect it to turn into like a kickboxing fight. But um, look him up, Luca Poclete. He did the Lucanator. That's the one that me and Nolan called submission of the year on this podcast at the when we did our end of the year podcast. And then Oliver Enkamp is the guy that did an inverted triangle that John McCarthy mistakenly called a buggy choke. It's an inverted triangle, and then again, I have articles written about it too. So you can check that out. Both just search their names on MyMMAnews.com, and you'll see both the articles with the breakdowns as to why that was not a buggy choke. But yeah, so Bellator's I'm expecting actually more dates announced this during the broadcast this Friday. So hopefully they're coming out to my neck of the woods soon. I wanted to get out there, Matt, for this one, but with the with planning this time of year, unfortunately for me with my other job, it's hard around the spring, especially since we went down a man at my other job, so my work just got harder. But yeah, it's definitely looked like everybody's picking up. Even one championship's coming here for the first time in May. So I mean, that's going to be your international fight week because you're pretty much going to everything going on that week.
I
So
am so excited to get to Denver and go to 3 events in 1 week. The fact that it all happened to be that way,
and
the
that
fact
BKFC event is like that's
the
the
BKFC event is the biggest event they've ever had.
yeah.
They've added a ton of fights. I was going to mention that. So they got the Rothwell fight. He's fighting Josh Watson, the guy who took out Hardy in the last
Hmm.
fight that went viral. Josh Copeland, old big heavyweight MMA fighter, fought at PFL. He's on the card. Chris Camozzi, uh,
Hmm.
uh, glory kickboxer, UFC fighter, fought Jacare, 3 times
Hmm.
in the UFC. He's on the card. Brandon Gertz, as we mentioned, Bellator, he's on the card.
Hmm.
Um, so right now they got 9 fights listed, and it's loaded. That week's
Yeah,
that, and then
it's like a who's who. Like I
yeah,
just
I mean that's not even talking about the Rockhold Perry,
yeah.
Eddie Alvarez Mendez, Beck Rawlings, Christina Fajea. I mean, you've got that. That's I mean, the, for a BKFC card, they are going all out.
Hmm.
Tickets are still available on Access, AXS, however.
So that's the Saturday before. That's the Saturday after the one event, and then
No, that's
that.
not before. So that's April 29th.
Oh, okay. So it's before that,
So it's the Saturday night, April 29th,
and
in
then
Denver.
Wednesdays
Wednesday is
Invicta.
Invicta 53, which tickets went on sale yesterday. I picked those up. Everything's general admission for that. So if you're in the Denver or area or you're looking to go, it looks like it's like 30. It came out to about $41, $42 a ticket after the fees. Small venue. Looks like it's first come first serve. Standing room only. Don't care. I was happy to see a
Yeah.
low price ticket that to go out and support our girl Jillian DeCourcy.
Yep.
She defends our title. That's Wednesday, and then 2 nights later, Cinco de Mayo, which it never even clicked in my head when I bought one ticket and booked all this stuff months ago. Yeah, Cinco de Mayo,
So yeah.
one card, in Bloomfield, where also the BKFC is. So they're slightly outside of Denver, only about 10 minutes, 15 minutes, it looks like, and then the BK or then the Invicta cards right smack dab, looks like in the center of Denver. So I mean that's a hell of a week. It's just amazing how it all fell
That's
together.
the
Um,
true international fight week. You got BKFC, Invicta, and then one championship. I mean, if you're gonna blow your wad on watching fights in a week, that's an actual international fight week. International to say the least, because you got this one championships coming from. They always do their stuff in Singapore and the other side of the world, and Victor's bringing in fighters from everywhere. I mean, from my neck of the woods, and then obviously BKFC with all those names
You got the
that
top international MMA combat
crazy.
organization. You got the top female women's organization, and you got the top bare knuckle fighting organization, all fighting within 7 days of each other in
Mm-hmm.
the same metro area. So, I mean, it's incredible. I mean, this weekend also a couple other just things to note for fight fans. There is no UFC, so I know that's gonna throw a lot of people into a tizzy. But you have obviously we mentioned Bellator Friday night. You
Mhm.
have Ryzen. If you're up a late night dweller, that's Friday night also. Anthony Joshua. We haven't talked boxing in a while, but he's got a heavyweight title fight on on Saturday midday. Out there in I don't know if it's in I don't know where the location is. I'm not sure if it's the Middle East or in London, but he's got a fight. Um, if you're into the wild stuff, Fight Circus
That's right, Fight
is on
Circus.
4 o'clock. And I'm also going on Sunday, heading to WrestleMania night too. So if you're into any of the pro wrestling stuff, WrestleMania is Saturday and Sunday night also. Um, I mean, I know we don't talk pro wrestling on this show, and I'm not some huge geek for it, but I'm super excited to go sit in a stadium with
Yeah,
like
no, we
70,000 people and fill a
yeah.
bucket list item since I've been, 5 years old and watched WrestleMania too. So, um, I mean, I look to be sending some pictures of that and just experiencing letting the kid come out in me and see the chaos that everything I've read about it, everything I've heard about WrestleManias are they're just kind of something you if it comes your way
Oh
you know
yeah, yeah,
try to
yeah.
check it out to
Yeah,
experience the spectacle of it.
I've definitely gone to my share of pro wrestling events, and I'm probably the furthest. I mean, I've written about the sport. Just because I can write about anything if it involves some form of combat, whether it be predetermined or actual martial arts combat. I write stuff about it. I mean, I even wrote about Sage Northcutt getting ready for that one event with Malachi Black, just recently over at My MMA News. So it's definitely a fun week. Don't let the fact that it's actually time to broaden your horizons when there's not a UFC event on. And that's as Kevin Nicholson says, non-UFC fight week shows are dope. So it's definitely going to be a good time, and I'm looking forward to getting your texts while you're over there on Friday, and I'll be sitting listening to the lovely John McCarthy doing this commentary, and hopefully, I mean, if I don't get home too late, I can jump in on the Zoom and try to get some words in with the winners myself. But I'm really excited about this Bellator card because again, not just because it's near you, but there's fighters on it that are all on they're kind of like they've been bounced around, but there's a lot of future fights to make depending on who wins. And I think it's a good time for Bellator, especially if you're just getting into the promotion right now.
I agree. I think that's going to kind of wrap us up here. Check us out on Spotify. We don't really plug our Spotify, but that's really the easiest way to check out our show. Just search Coast to Coast Combat Hour on Spotify, and you can actually get a video and audio links there. Um, Other ways, obviously, we mentioned it at Combat Hour on Twitter, Coast to Coast Combat Hour on Instagram. Follow me, Matthew Hawkins, at MMA Hawk 21 on Twitter and Instagram. Follow Ed at Carbazol on Twitter, Carbeerzol on Instagram, and Old Head Carb on Twitch. And again, you can always check us out at allaccessmma.com. As Ed mentioned earlier, they got some new stuff coming out about UFC San Antonio. So take a look at some of the work that Jacob's doing over there while really hustling just to cover the sport. So allaccessmma.com. I think that wraps us up. I'll hopefully be getting some photos, some stuff out this weekend from the fights, and hopefully they're entertaining. And whether you're in the crowd or sitting on your couch, you got a beer in your hand and enjoying some good fights. So have
Should
a
be a
good
good time.
have a good weekend, and thanks for listening, everyone.
Peace.